chased by the deep state, fighting for independence, thinking about revolution, looking for alternative solutions. The enemies of the deep state will tell you what others even don't dare to think. Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski.
Welcome, welcome. This is the podcast Die Guten Menschen, Public Enemies of the Deep State, presented to you by freewestmedia.com and the German news magazine Zuerst. My name is Manuel Ochsenreiter and I speak to you from Africa, and I send to you a very, very happy and glad Hatuna Matata, what, by the way, we also say already a little bit in Germany. And my partner in this show is the Polish dissident and the first political prisoner of Poland, Mateusz Piskorski. Welcome, Mateusz.
Hello, and warm greetings from cold Poland to hot Africa.
Do you say Hatuna Matata in Poland? I don't think so. Not yet.
Not yet, but probably we'll get used to it in some years, yes.
So yeah, get ready. Or come here, then you have it already all. So, what are we going to do here? We will speak about geopolitical topics, and we will present to our audience frequently an interesting guest. Is that right?
Well, we'll present an alternative point of view because I guess that a lot of listeners are quite fed up with the mainstream media, so we'll try to interpret all the processes and geopolitical events from an alternative point of view.
And I think this is today absolutely necessary, and I think it is an absolute good development that people lose their trust in corporate and official media, since what we have in Germany, it's Lügenpresse, it means lying media or lying press. I think we are so fed up with lies from the mainstream media that an alternative point of view is really necessary, more necessary than maybe ever before.
Well, it should make all the listeners to think more, to think independently, and well, of course, we are an interactive initiative, so we are to listen to suggestions and opinions of our listeners as well.
And I think we will plan later on a call-in moment. But for now, let us just try to get over this first podcast in a way that it can be published and that it is somehow more or less professional.
Yes, let's start with some most important topics of the last weeks. I think that we should take a short look at the Middle East and the situation in Syria. As well, according to me, I guess that a lot happened. There was a great moment that there was a shift of geopolitical power there. Probably an empire which is fading, a U.S. empire, and its has ceased, and probably we'll have a totally new situation, totally new rules of the game in the Middle East. What do you think?
Well, I think it's very correct, and I think that Donald Trump did a very correct move by withdrawing the American troops, despite the fact that they obviously still are on the ground of Syrian oil plants. But what we saw there, so German mainstream newspapers were writing that in Syria, Russia won without using big hard power. And I think it is not so far from reality. I mean, what happened there is a development that we can say that in Syria, we are closer to a national peace than we were ever before.
Well, since a few years, we have a great comeback of Russia, of Russian politics to the region, the whole region. Well, some decades ago, as we all remember, Soviet players there in the region withdrawn from not only from the Middle East, but also from northern part of Africa and so on. And now it's coming back, and it's coming back as a mediator, which is the most important thing. It's coming back as a country which has a lot of as the one who could organize all the negotiations, who could organize the meetings of different, often warring and conflicting.
The side effect of all this development is, of course, that it could be a final solution for what we call the refugee crisis in Europe, because if there is peace, the refugees can go back. And I think this is the best for Europe as well as for Syria. What do you think?
Well, and I totally agree, but I would add one more thing. It's also a good news for those European countries who somehow depend on United States and who somehow still count on Washington as a guarantee of their safety and geopolitical position.
Are we speaking about Poland?
We're speaking about countries, Romania in the south. So a few European countries, at least people who are able to think independently in those countries, can come to a conclusion that United States are the least reliable partner in the whole world when it comes to global players. So probably, and I'm just looking at the effects of what has happened with the Kurds here in Poland and in the Baltic states as well. Probably people will understand that the US is not a country which could be perceived as a partner in any kind of conflicts and let's say crisis management.
If we put it now on the level of German geopolitical philosophy, we can say that an extraterritorial power is never or cannot be ever a real ally in a regional conflict. Do you agree?
Yes, totally. And of course, if you look at the classics of geopolitics, you can see also that a sea power, which is United States in this particular case, cannot replace land power, which is in this particular case Russia, particularly in Eurasia. And we are speaking about Eurasia. Middle East is a part of Eurasia as well. So I guess that from the moment being, we can see the problems of Eurasia, at least in the Middle East, will be solved by regional players, which is quite natural. Any interference of players who are from outside of those powers who have the nature of sea, the classical geopolitics.
Mateusz, when we speak now about sea power, I would like to speak to you about girls.
Oh, that's interesting, at least for the part of our listeners.
Yes, I would like to speak to you about girls who cross the ocean on a sailing boat, about Greta Thunberg.
Well, that's a case when we can even we are talking about a kind of PR pedophilia in political science, Central European countries. Yes, we have used a term of political or electoral pedophilia. The politicians abused children and youngsters for their promotion. And this is the case, I guess. Some people in this world abuse the girl, which is I think, suffering some kind of well, I don't know how to call it, but
you're running into a dead end. I like that.
Anyway, no, I'm just telling that as far as we know, this girl is specific, unique in the youngsters in Sweden. So they are abusing this poor youngster, poor girl. For their own goals, and this is quite cruel, I guess. And this is kind of a PR pedophilia of those people who stay behind it.
She will be soon 18. She will be soon 18.
Well, soon, but yet she's not. So still, it's a kind of pedophilia and abuse children of youngsters for quite strange goals and ideas.
You speak like a Polish Catholic cardinal, really. But I agree. But
if a German agrees, it means that I'm right. Okay.
Yes. Can you give exactly that message to me in a written way with a signature?
Of course, and with a signature of a lot more people from Poland.
Oh, I love it. So what do we have? We have, I think, how old is she now? 16 or 17? I don't know. I think she's 17 now. So we
I know that she misses her school lessons, and this is the problem here, yes? And this is a problem we should discuss. We should not discuss, I guess, her speeches and her public actions, but we should discuss the problem of her school lessons.
But you know that we in Europe are now implementing our laws regarding of her speeches, and that is very serious. And I think there is a geopolitical aspect of Greta Thunberg's message, and that message is the total deindustrialization of Europe. Especially of Germany, which is, beside France, maybe one of the last industrialized countries in Europe. And that makes the whole case serious. We have, and I know we all speak about the old, white, evil men, but we have a lot of old, white, evil men in Europe who are totally loyal and obedient to Greta Thunberg.
Well, this is the problem which is not only so serious in Scandinavia now, in Sweden, the whole land of Greta Thunberg, but of course in other European countries. Of course, I agree that such a huge PR campaign, whose face is the young girl from Sweden, can somehow impact or could somehow influence the views of ordinary people on the industrial development and on the stage of, let's say, economic development the whole Europe is. So I totally agree that the main goal is probably deindustrialization of Europe. It is, to some extent, it's already true. I mean, to some extent, it has already happened. If you look at the post-Soviet area and the countries of Central and Eastern, but it might happen in Germany as well, and also in
already.
some other. Well, so it happened in the eastern part of Germany. You agree with me, I guess?
Yes, and it happens also in West Germany. It happens now everywhere, and we are trying to total reconstruct the industry in a negative way. And we will not have any industrial advantage. I think that Greta Thunberg could be the coffin nail of German industry in long term.
Well, but on the other hand, who could take advantage of industrialization of European countries? What do you think? First and foremost, of course, as long as this Donald Trump, the US, of course, I don't have any. Trump and his administration won't pay any attention to Greta Thunberg. Yes. Second, I believe that the Chinese leaders don't pay any attention to Greta Thunberg. Which means that in this particular case, the danger of deindustrialization is only concerning Europe, probably. Yeah. Yes?
I agree. I think that no one else gives a shit on her except Europe and parts of US, not even whole US. I think that Europe is the most fanatical and insane political leading audience when it comes to these topics.
Definitely, yes. That makes us to ask a question, a kind of conspiracy theory-like question: who funds the activities of Greta Thunberg?
Mateusz, since I am in Africa, I can have my free thoughts, but I will not express them, since I want someday to go back to my country.
I understand. That's why we won't talk about it, because I guess that it's quite obvious. By the way, anyway, of course, this is a geopolitical importance, but on the other hand, As an old school political scientist, I can once again tell that that's a pity that such a poor and, to be honest, primitive PR campaign influences the people in the West. I mean, the people, they take it seriously. That is the problem now. I mean, the problem in the political European nation.
Didn't we speak now enough about young girls with maybe mental problems?
Yes, I guess it's enough, at least for this podcast.
Listen now to Professor Alexandr Dugin and follow his orders.
Hello, I am Alexandr Dugin. Today I'm going to speak about Eurasian dissident of Europe. So there are the people who are suffering persecutions and repressions for their ideals, their values, their options, their choices. Today, Europe is not anymore the territory, the ground of freedom. It becomes more and more totalitarian camp. It is, I'm calling that third totalitarianism. First totalitarianism was communist one, second fascist, National Socialist totalitarianism, and now we are living under third totalitarianism, liberal totalitarianism. So liberal elites, liberal regimes don't support any form of dissidence. And today dissidents are precisely, first of all, the representatives of alternative liberal political ideology. Radical communists or fascists, neo-fascists are obviously dissidents. And if, for example, the fighters for freedom sanction alternative representative of totalitarianism, we could think about legitimacy of this action, of this stand. But what is the problem? So today, liberals, they sanction everybody who doesn't accept their system of values as universal one. So that is the name of the famous Karl Popper's book, Open Society, and subtitle is Open Society and its Enemies. So everybody who challenges liberalism becomes automatically the enemy of open society and qualified as fascist, as Stalinist, and so on. So that is the logic of third liberal totalitarianism. Everybody who doesn't agree with global, liberal, progressive, political correctness and their narrative, they are immediately qualified as Russians, Putin spies, Eurasianists in the pejorative sense, and so on. And they become automatically Dugin's friends, because I'm considered by the liberal system as most dangerous philosopher in the world and the enemy number one of liberal democracy. I could agree with that. I am a dangerous philosopher. Maybe there are most dangerous philosopher, and I would like to meet with them and to make a friendship with them, because to think and to be philosopher is dangerous. To think is dangerous, and to be man is dangerous. So I could accept normally this name as well. I am the enemy of liberalism because I don't like this ideology. I think it is completely false, and I am against modernism, against modernity, against Western hegemony. defending the difference of culture, civilization, and first of all tradition and sacred root of any culture, any people. I strongly believe in a multipolar world where every culture will be treated equally with the other without imposition of liberal or not liberal, fascist, nationalist values as universal. So I think the modernity could find its place in that, but not the central, absolutely not hegemonic. In that sense, the concept of Eurasia is something like that. It is invitation to reorganize our society on the set of values that are organic and traditional and in accordance and harmony with our roots. So Dugin's friends and the partisans of Eurasia who is in favor of that, they don't betray their country, they betray liberalism, and that is why they suffer. So I think the only way to have the victory is to fight, to continue to fight against what we consider to be totalitarianism. So, but for that, we will be obliged to suffer. There is no victory without suffering. There is no victory, no truth that for that we don't pay with our life, with our blood, with our sufferings. So I don't think it is normal, but it is human. It is historical. It is maybe it is the kind of proof of our firm belief in our values and our ideals. So this podcast is short, and indeed I would like to support my friends Manuel Ochsenreiter or Mateusz Piskorski and all other, the many, the thousands, the 10,000s of Dugin's friends in the world who share with myself this Eurasianism, this multipolar world vision, who hate liberal totalitarianism, who fight for the freedom and for justice and for the right of any people, any culture, any choice and any option to exist and to express itself. So this podcast is dedicated to all Dugin's friends and all Eurasianists persecuted or not yet, but we are living in a crucial time, and any historical revolutionaries passed by the difficult path of the suffering. So to suffer is to be human. So, everybody suffers, but it is much better, and that is the greater dignity to suffer for ideas, not for some material inconvenience. So, when the suffering has the reason, it is half of suffering, is less than suffering, is the heroic act, and the terrible thing is to suffer without reason. And so I invite you to suffer for reasons, to fight for ideas that are yours, and not have a fear. We will surely win.
We have just heard the words of Professor Alexandr Dugin. I think he is the most well-known and also the most feared in some neoconservative and American circles of all geopoliticians, of all theoreticians and political philosophers of the contemporary world. The main idea is, quite clear. And the main idea he's talking about since many, many years is an idea of Eurasia, an idea so frightening for most of the liberal and neoconservative as well leaders in the west part of the world. We both with Manuel, of course, follow this path, yes, and I follow this path here in Poland since many years. You follow the same path, Manuel, in Germany since many years, and well, we are talking about a geopolitical concept which would really make us a geopolitical superpower. Yes, we are talking about a geopolitical concept which is not a petty, let's say, economic integration and standardization as it is now with the Brussels-run European Union, the bureaucratic European Union, but we are talking about a continental integration of a great civilization. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely, and it is somehow fascinating that this point of view, which is a very logical and reasonable point of view, the more you go to the east, the more this point of view is present. For example, you will hear in Russia the very clear point of view that one of the main tasks of the Anglo-Saxon powers, which include, of course, the United Kingdom, but also the United States of America, is to prevent such a continental superpower, which consists out of Europe with the core Germany, or the industrial core Germany, and the Russian Federation, or Russia, or the Russian world, to say it like this. So to prevent this under all circumstances. And I think this is maybe also in every smaller topic, if we speak about Nord Stream, if we speak about sanctions, if we speak about Crimea, if we speak about Ukraine and Donbass, that always the pattern of dividing Europe or the European part of Eurasia from the Asian part of Eurasia is one of the main motives of the opponents.
Well, more than 20 years ago, in 1997, there was a book by the quite well-known then Zbigniew Brzeziński, published. His most well-known book was The Grand Chessboard. As we all know that, and I suppose that, well, it's still in force. I mean, all those basic ideas of US policy, regardless of who is now the president, who is now sitting in the White House. Well, the American deep state still tries to implement the policies which were somehow promoted and invented by Brzeziński and other neoconservative politicians. And of course, Brzeziński is very honest and frank with us. If you read the Grand Chessboard again, you will see that he admits openly and publicly that the main goal of US is to prevent the cooperation between the continental Europe and Russia, as well as the whole Eurasian economic bloc, because as we know, Russia has already, to some extent, started the idea of Eurasian economic integration, which means Eurasian Economic Union.
And it fits like a glove that we come to our next topic, and this is the geopolitical book of the week.
This is the Geopolitical Book of the Week.
So, as the Geopolitical Book of the Week, we chose for this week a book of a Spanish officer and a security advisor. And the English title is How They Rule the World, the 22 Secret Strategies of Global Power. And the name of the author is Pedro Banos. I wish my Spanish would be better. Do you know how to pronounce the name?
I have heard the spelling Baños, I think. Something like that. Yes. Well, yes. So the Spanish listeners don't hate us so much, and well, please be patient with our Spanish. Anyway, the whole book is quite interesting because of the person of the author. I mean, the author, as a former counterintelligence officer, should be treated as a reliable source. Yes, do you agree with me?
Absolutely. And what is quite interesting, me as a German, it is now, I would say, forbidden to read his book, because his book was taken from the book market literally overnight after an author in the German Welt newspaper criticized his book as full with anti-Semitism. And from that moment on, the book disappeared, literally disappeared from the market. What I read is also that he had problems with other publishing houses. By the way, what is important to know is that the German translation of the book was published not in some right-wing publishing house or some weird left-wing publishing house or lunatic fringe publishing house, but by a very respected mainstream publishing house called Heine. They took it completely out of the offer and they don't deliver anymore. So for us Germans, it is almost impossible, or it is impossible now to read the German translation of the book. I'm not so firm how it is right now in other countries, but here we have really a system of, let me call it maybe economic censorship, which might work much better than the censorship in open dictatorships. So what people are not supposed to read, they simply don't get it to read. They are not told, don't read it. Yeah?
Well, in Poland, it hasn't been published at all, but we have some small, let's say, even very small, let's say, anti-system publishing houses, and I guess that they will publish it. I'm even going to suggest one of the publishers to do that. That would be quite interesting, and I guess that those who have decided to, let's say, reveal some secrets of the system, those who used to be insiders, working for the whole system of Atlantists and neoconservative forces in Europe, are quite a good source for all of us, for all the dissidents, because by quoting them, by showing what they can say about the internal issues of the whole system of how it works and so on, well, we sound more credible. Yes, we just show that people who at a certain point, let's say, left the whole mechanism of the current regime, and which really should be read and listened to. Although, well, I have an impression anyway that it is not a kind of, scientific or very sophisticated book. Nevertheless, it might be quite good for, let's say, ordinary, average European leader who is not so much into, let's say, the questions of political science and international relations, but just would be eager to understand how the whole regime of international relations works.
So let's repeat the title, How They Rule the World, the 22 Secret Strategies of Global Power, from Pedro Baños. A book, ironically, I'm just reading, a section about the Rothschild banking dynasty was omitted from the English language version of Pedro Baños' book. So
that's quite obvious. That's quite obvious.
So that must be the most interesting chapter of the book, I think, and I hope that we will get it to read.
Well, let's hope that the whole I'm sure that the whole uncensored book will be translated in one of the very few countries in the contemporary world which respects the ideas of freedom of speech. I mean, in Russian Federation, because as far as I know, they publish most of the books without any cuttings or censorship, and I guess that, well, if it goes like that with the censorship in Europe, we'll soon have all to study Russian language to get the good literature.
And we are getting already to the end of our podcast, unfortunately. I say thank you very much to Mateusz Piskorski.
And I say thank you very much to Manuel Ochsenreiter,
who is not just a dissident, who is also a very busy dissident, and as well also as editor-in-chief of Zuerst magazine and a contributor to Free West Media. We look forward for the next podcast. Do you as well?
Well, hear you soon. Hear our dissident voice next week.
And until then, try to survive and try to get the book of Pedro Baños. You will not regret it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This program was presented to you by Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski, the hottest dissident who won't violate any time the global rules against racism, extremism, or any other bad isms.